Anton A. Hill. Yeah, what do you want me to say or do? Oh, okay. Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah. And this is pausing now, right? Oh, okay, alright. Okay. This is Anton A. Hill. This is Anton A. Hill. This is Anton A. Hill. This is Anton A. Hill, the Atheist Asshole of the Atheist Asshole Show on YouTube/Anton A. Hill, Twitter, Anton A. Hill, and finally, atheistasshole.com. And you are listening to none other than Apostasy Now. And you are listening to none other than Apostasy Now. Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah. Oh, okay, good. Yeah, hopefully we can trim that because I fucked up the middle, but whatever. Well, you enjoy this, and sure we'll bump into each other again soon. Oh, okay. Yeah. All right, well, you take care, and more talking soon. And you are listening to none other than Apostasy Now. Okay, bye-bye.
And welcome back to another episode of Apostasy Now. Smashlock and I sat down with Carl of the formerly awesome, and you should go and listen to the back catalog podcast, Post Rapture Looting. Now, even though Carl's not doing that show anymore, I have word from him that he is probably going to be starting a new one. It's going to be a little different, and it's hopefully something that we can work with him on a little bit here and there. Carl's awesome. This conversation roams from one thing to another, but I wanted to give you a larger sense of who he is, rather than when he's always trying to promote other people. Here's a chance for you to get to know a little bit about Carl. He's an extremely intelligent and level-headed guy in the community, so I'm glad to hear that he's planning on keeping at it. We've also just passed the 1-year anniversary on August 24th of the show. I want to thank especially all the listeners, all the guests for being on the show, and for me, I want to also thank Smashlock for being part of the show. You guys have all been awesome. Hopefully we have a year 2, a year 3. We'll see where it goes and how crazy it gets. So let's get going with Carl, Smashlock, and me on Apostasy Now.
We are not of this race. We are not of this earth. We are wanderers in the fourth dimensions of space and time, cut off from our own planet and our own people by eons in universes that are far beyond the reach of your most advanced sciences.
It's true. Every word of it's true. You don't know what you've done coming here.
Because I'm very much a skeptic. I'm more of a skeptic than I am an atheist. I mean, atheist is a conclusion based on my skepticism.
You'll have to come like a little child to the foot of the cross.
That attitude is what is responsible for the rise of atheism.
That's not what Islam is all about. Islam is peace.
What is the penalty for leaving the Muslim faith?
With the death penalty.
Thank you.
This is Apostasy Now.
For people to get the information correct before they start yapping.
Get ready to root for the bad guys.
It begins with E, evidence. All the evidence.
And this is why I love YouTube, because you can get a crash course in just about damn near anything on YouTube. Like, I didn't know how to take apart an impeller and inside a dishwasher pump. And then I watched like 2 videos and I'm like, well, that doesn't seem too hard. And my pump was a little bit more complex than that other one, but that I watched the video for, but the premise was the same. So I basically took a picture of it every step of the way that I took it apart, so I knew which screws went where.
Yeah. It's amazing what you can find on there.
Yeah. That's how I learned how to take apart my PS3 when it burnt out. On the internet.
What do you think, Carl?
I have a similar story. Our vacuum cleaner was just not sucking like it normally does. And So we took it to a vacuum repair place, and we have a Dyson, and they are a different brand. And well, actually, not we, my wife took it. And all they did was bitch and moan about Dysons and how we should buy one of their brands because it's the best vacuum cleaner, ironically from a repair shop. So, clearly they're in business because of, broken vacuum cleaners. But anyways, so we took it and they said the clutch in it needed to be replaced. And so we're like, okay, fine, do that. So they, quote, did that, and then it still wasn't working very good. And then about a year or so later, it went out again. And I was like, well, fuck this. So I looked up a YouTube video on how to replace it, and we ordered the part. And you could get just the belt for like $1 or $2, or the whole clutch assembly for $5 or something like that. Maybe it was 7 or 8, but you get the point. So I was like, just get the whole thing. I'll replace the whole thing. And so I watched the video on how to do it. There was probably 7 or 8 screws, and took the whole thing out, put it back in, the new one in. And not only did the vacuum cleaner work better, but it was better than after they had replaced it, which, when they replaced it, they really just kind of gave the vacuum a cleaning and, quote, replaced it. But it was working nearly like it was new again. But the thing that really pissed me off is the old clutch assembly I took out had a date from when we had bought the vacuum. So they never replaced it in the first place, or they replaced it with an old part. And that kind of pissed me off. So I wrote them a Yelp review. and then just to balance things out, I left 2 good reviews for places I normally go to on Yelp. So I don't want to just be that guy who only leaves shitty reviews on Yelp.
A force for good.
Yeah, it's amazing how much repair guys at any place, whether it's plumber, whether it's dishwasher guy, vacuum guy, tech support, anywhere, they guard their secrets like they are guarding the Holy Grail. And yet, as soon as you figure out how fucking simple it is to do it yourself, you realize that they're charging you up the ass for almost no work.
Yeah, every now and then they'll do a TV show where they'll send a car, say, into a mechanic shop.
Yeah.
They'll have the expert say what is or isn't wrong with it in the first place. They'll bring it in for the problem, and then they'll analyze what they've done afterwards. I remember one in particular, they had it where they went in saying that they were having, I forget what it was the problem was, but when they left, the cruise control no longer worked. And the mechanic went in there and looked, and he said, look, they've unhooked the cruise control line here.
No.
There's an electrical wire. He goes, all you have to do is snap that back in. But we're going to bring it back in a couple of days. And they had like a little old lady driving it, right? And so she goes in, I can't get the cruise control to work. Oh, hey, we'll get that fixed for you. They charge you like $200 or something. Yeah. And then they went in there with the video footage, and the guy's like, no comment, no comment.
Even when they're honestly just charging you what their companies would say is the call to get the service guy out and the time to take the part off. And I think people get intimidated by things that look like they're complex, and they just assume that it's beyond them. Yeah. Like the first time I ever had a warranty call on my old dishwasher to get it to get the trap cleaned, and they would do like cleaning maintenance. The guy comes out, and he was like looking over his shoulder at me like he was trying to guard what he was doing. And I'm like, oh, how hard is that thing to take out? And he goes, oh, special tools, only I got them. You can't find them anywhere. Can't find. I had them in my fucking garage. I already had the tools needed. So after he left, I freaking went through my entire drill driver set.
He was the special tool.
Yeah.
He's a tool, and he's special.
Yeah, and special. Special tools do, like, when they're really needed, drive me crazy. It's just
specialty.
They do it on purpose.
I found a couple screws on some other mechanical devices that I've taken apart, which I shouldn't have, that had like very specialty chucks or whatever and screw heads, and I'm like, wow, I don't have this. So then I take one of those drills that grips bad screws and brings them out, and then I'll just find a screw with the same thread but with a head that I can actually put in with a regular screwdriver, and I just put it in its place. So whenever I have to take it apart again, I've got the right screw. This is a Red Robbie. Nice.
Yep. Yeah, I think some places they intentionally customize their pieces just to make it all like an inside thing. You can't just be someone with regular pieces.
Yeah.
That's a conspiracy theory, I guess, but I suspect in some cases it's true.
Yeah, I agree. I just think people should take this topic has no place in atheism. But yeah, I think people should really just take the effort to learn about the things they buy. And if somebody comes to you and says, yeah, it's going to be $600 for this and $400 for that, and no, look up online, see how much the parts are.
At least talk to some people you know. Like, some people you know are going to have more knowledge in these areas than you, and they can at least tell you whether something sounds insane or not.
Yeah, like I've spent aside from my dishwasher, just on my vehicle this year, about $500. But that $500 is in place of spending about $2,500 paying a repair shop to do that same work.
Yeah. Well, my main thing is always cars, right? When there's a problem with the car, if it's, just getting it tuned up, something standard or whatever, I have kind of a general idea of how that goes, how much should be, charged. But if it's a specialty thing and they're like, it costs hundreds of dollars, I'm going to go and talk to someone I know that knows about cars and go, does this sound legit? Like, does this sound like a fair price?
Yeah.
Yeah, it'll vary by the make and model too, because
yeah.
Some items they're harder to get to, right? And there's a standard pricing set for. Can you hear my wife yelling at the kids in the background?
Yeah, I can hear them. Yeah.
Yeah. There's a standard price set for make, model, and what needs to be done. So you can actually look that up. That's all on Google now. But back to the old lady scenario there. You just have to trust that what they're telling you actually needs to be done. And I mean that just goes back to being an informed consumer. If knowledge is power, right? And if you don't know what the hell you're doing, maybe talk to a friend or whatever, So informed consumerism.
Yeah.
Caveat emptor, was it? So
was that buyer beware?
Yes.
Yeah.
I like your message here, by the way. Telling us you're ready. You there, Jesus? It's me. And I'm getting the urge to touch myself.
Yeah, sweet.
Yeah, wrong chat window. I apologize.
Yeah. But by the way, I believe Jesus had no comment on that one.
Yeah.
Because he
usually doesn't.
He was never with a woman, they said, so I imagine that's why there was no comment on that.
Yeah, well, he's hanging out with 12 dudes in robes, in togas, I mean, what's a boy to do?
Maybe it was a mistranslation sometimes. Instead of fishers of men, they meant seamen.
Yeah, no doubt. I'm telling you, on my first YouTube account, I had a video taken down, and then I think that account got banned. I did a mashup between the audio of Brokeback Mountain and the Passion of the Christ. I called it Brokeback Jesus. Oh my god, I still remember it was funny, but fuck, it took like 2 days.
Yeah, you should find out if any of your videos are still up and in circulation, man. I'd like to see them.
No, they're gone. I was very offensive then.
He used to go online on YouTube and was known for hashing it out with the apologists there.
Yeah.
Matt Quigley was kind of the guy I like to pick on a lot.
Yeah, it's like you want to argue with him, but you're just banging your head against the wall and you're saying, "Look, 1 + 1 is 2," and they're, "No, it's not, because Jesus." It's
my feelings.
Yeah. It's really a mood thing, though, isn't it? I mean, you say, "I'm never doing that again," and then 10 minutes later.
he went on under a different name. He had the Matt Quigley Report, and then he had Debate Crusher. And he's like, the intellectual ego on this guy versus the reality of his ability was... They did not coincide with one another.
Right.
Like, he had a very self-inflated view of his ability to rationally destroy somebody else's arguments, and
he thought he was awesome.
Oh, God. Did he ever? He thought he was imbued.
Atheists run from me.
We run from you, all right. It's because you're weird.
The atheist killer.
Yeah.
They run right away from me and do things that they enjoy rather than talking to me. I'm awesome.
Yeah. What was it? He said, "Oh yeah, go look at this book, The Evolution Cruncher. It's got 57 scientific facts why cosmic evolution it can't happen." It's like, what? You're making my brain hurt. Oh well, that was years ago though. So
it's like having a quantum mechanic for your car.
Yeah.
In theory, what's wrong with your car is
homeopathic fuel.
Hey, if things keep going the way they're going, that's what we're going to be getting.
Homeopathic. There's one molecule in your tank of actual gasoline.
My car won't run. It's going to cost you $700,000 in repairs because it's not translating the homeopathic fuel into forward motion. What's $700,000 for? 1 gallon of gas. What?
Shit. You real mechanics your engine's just full of water, right? Hey man, you don't have to believe like I believe. I just need this water to get my car going.
Jesus is going to have to come back and start turning 2 barrels of oil to feed the car.
That would be today's version. Rather than wine, it'd be oil.
Hey, is holy water the first homeopathic water? There's like 1 molecule of prayer in there.
I think so.
I believe it. So what topics have been interesting you lately?
Me? Nothing. I'm boring. Sadly.
Well, you just had time off from work too, right?
Yeah, I had a sabbatical, which was brilliant. Not long enough. And I just can't help but to think I'm looking forward to retirement. You get a nice long vacation, and you don't want to go back. And it's funny too, because I think about, you hear these people who they retire at 65 or whatever, and then they die 3 months later, right?
Yeah.
And you go, well, why? What happened, right? And then you hear, oh, well, they were just, their life was working, and that's what gave them happiness, and they couldn't work anymore, and whatever. And
or there's their social life, right?
Or whatever it was. And I'm thinking to myself, oh my God, I would, even if I didn't have to work, I would, I would just go crazy because I still couldn't do everything I wanted to do,
Yeah. You're someone who knows how to make projects for yourself, have goals.
Yeah,
It's I think it's that some people with certain jobs, it puts a pressure on you to kind of shut down certain expectations and hopes, and it's easier just to sort of kind of turn into how do I put this?
Automaton?
A little bit. It's just kind of a survival tactic. So then when what you have basically is more simple things, now I'm calling people stupid. That's not what I mean. But
no, I don't think there's
simple pleasures in life, like the people you're talking to, the people rather than going, one day I want to write the great American fiction novel. And so then when your job's done, you retire, and that's the entire social life you had, which is part of your identity, is gone. I think it can be devastating to some people's,
I also think that people who are more lazy probably have the evolutionary advantage of laziness. No, don't get me wrong, but think about it. What is lazy? Lazy is not doing stuff.
Lazy is energy saving, so you can have energy for the hunt.
Well,
there you go.
I could agree with that, but I would also think it is your ability to remain idle.
Yeah.
And be okay with that. It's not like lazy people. I'm not saying people who are lazy don't get bored, but they're okay with boredom. Boredom doesn't define them.
I don't know. I mean, I think lazy, I know what you're saying, but I think lazy is casts a big net, right? I mean, you could be lazy because you don't want to take out the trash, or you could be lazy because you don't want to, finish working on your project in the house, right? So, but yeah, I don't know. Back to me selfishly, I would have a hard time being bored. I would, not that I'm certainly lazy in many respects, and I have absolutely no problem sitting on the couch and playing a video game all fucking day. But, if I didn't have to go to work, I would be able to work out more. It's funny. I was thinking about it. I would work out more, and I would also probably eat better. I would be less stressed, and I'd be able to spend more time with my family. And I can't, so to think that someone who retires is unhappy, I don't think the problem is retirement. There's some other problem there.
Yeah.
Right.
You're right. Yeah.
So
I'm attempting a social experiment in reverse retirement. I left work at 26 when my kids were born, premature. And I've been a stay-at-home dad for a majority of that time. I'm starting to go back to school now, which is weird, but enjoyable. And then I will rejoin the workforce closer to the last 25 years of meaningful working life. So I kind of had my 10-year break.
No, that's awesome. You know, it's funny too. You go back to school as an adult, as opposed to, well, I shouldn't, you know, maybe not adult, but you go back to school, say in your 30s versus in your late teens, and it's a totally different experience. You know, you're going there to get an education. You know, you have other things you could be doing with your time, but you're making a conscious decision to do that. And I think you're a lot more dedicated. Whereas if you're 18 or something, you're kind of, you know, out of high school, you've been in school your whole life. You for a lot of it, you probably skated through, and, you know, I just don't think the life experience isn't really there to make you motivated to get the top-notch education.
Yeah. A lot of the younger kids in my course were like, how do you do that? How do you get those grades? And I'm like, I go home and read. It's not
this
fucking
mysterious
rocket
formula. I read the books I'm given.
That's the secret.
There's no giant conspiracy to keep you down. Your life experience is not there. Mom and Dad are paying for this, aren't they?
Carl interviews Hemant Mehta, a.k.a. the Friendly Atheist.
You're fairly internet famous, if you will. Your students can search for your name on the internet.
Right.
And it's unique enough that they're going to find you.
Right.
Has that caused any interesting situations at work?
You know, it really hasn't, and the reason is, you know, even if the kids find out or they bring it up, I'm pretty quick to just shut them down in a polite way. You know, when we're at school, I'm there to teach these kids math. I'm not there to talk about religion with them. So, you know, if they want to talk about the website, I'm really not interested in doing it. So it really hasn't come up. I mean, no parents are complaining about the website because what are they going to say, you know?
Right.
We don't like what you do in your private time outside of the classroom. I mean, they really have nothing to complain about.
Right.
So it really hasn't been an issue. And even if any other people have complained, you know, my bosses don't really care because I'm not doing it in school.
Right.
So.
And that's fantastic. And I think the benefit of your location in a big city really helps out with that as well, you know?
There are some things you can't mitigate. Like, you know, for me, it was so world-changing because I was very sheltered from a very conservative religious background. And so I ended up going into depression just because I was suddenly, for God's sakes, I was talking about ancient Greek civilization and philosophy and all these things at once. And it just kind of catches up to you after a while if you're paying attention and you're absorbing it all. I think there's probably a number of people like me who it just suddenly slams into them and they're not sure how to cope with the fact that everything they were taught is now in a completely different perspective. But what you're saying, I think, is true. I waited a couple years to go back. If it hadn't been for that kind of phenomenon going on with me, I was doing way better than my fellow students because I was more focused on the fact that I knew every day how much money it was costing me to be there and how much work I'd have to do to make up for it if I was screwing around. And not all of them, but a lot of them were just straight, like you say, straight out of high school. Mom and dad helping them. Oh man, some of them had brand new cars, brand new cell phones. Like back then, that was around 2000. So cell phones were still more novel than they are now.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember I took a psych class, and the teacher was going over the lesson for that particular week, and I had read that chapter, you know, all 20 pages of it. Could you imagine to read that proactively? And she had mentioned this relationship between these two psychologists in the field, and she was talking about how they were chummy on some stuff. And then I raised my hand. I was the annoying guy in the class. I'm like, well, in the book it said that they were, you know, more rivals and they didn't get along. And I'm like, here, let me find it in the book. And she's like, no, I know the book. I know the and then she went on to explain that. And I'm thinking to myself, well, you know, and she explained it further, but it just, you know, it was funny because, you know, here I was, you know, proactively, you know, and impassioned into this course. It was very interesting, you know, one-on-one type of class. And I'm looking around and, you know, these kids are like falling asleep in the class. You know, it's just like, what are you guys doing? I don't know.
In my psych class, the first week of class, I told my teacher, I said, am I allowed to jump ahead and pick the topics for my essays and just get them prepped up now, or do I have to wait until we've gone over the lessons? And she goes, if you want to go ahead, but you're going to have a difficult time prepping things that we haven't gone over yet. And I'm like, all right, cool. As long as I'm allowed, I'm going to go ahead and kind of set up my format. And she's like, all right. So I did my first 3 essays, rough drafts, within the first 3 weeks of class. So 1 week for one, second week for the second, and the third week for the third. And these are all just things.
Wait a second. When did you fit in all your drinking at the bar with your friends' time?
Drinking at what?
I believe that's a university.
I didn't socialize until after all the work was done. But then as time went on and we kind of got used to the format that she wanted, and you know, the first assignment day came down and I had a line of people going, "Hey, can you check mine? Can you check mine? Like, where's yours?" And I'm like, "I'm already done." It's like, it's not even due for another 2 weeks. And I'm like, I know. It's good. I got it. And then for my 4th assignment, because I only had to hand in 3 of the 4, I asked the teacher if I could do my 4th assignment on her master's thesis. Oh boy, did that ever light up her face. Eh? She's just, really? On mine? And she's like, it's a heavy read. And I'm like, it's okay. I'll just curl up with a thesaurus and the dictionary and, you know, get to work. And I actually managed to read it in a weekend, and then I brought it back and I gave it to her because I'd already taken jot notes of everything I wanted to write about. And she's like, "Oh, couldn't do it?" And I'm like, "No, I'm done." And she's like, "What?" So fast forward to just about the end of that semester, and the last one's due, and I just went to her and I said, "Look, I got a lot of exams that I'm still studying for, so I'm not going to hand it in, but you know, it was really nice for you to let me read it. I appreciate that." And she's like, you know, you could see that there was a little bit of doubt in her eyes that I actually did anything. Yeah. So then she started to talk to me about it, and I started to kind of regurgitate what I remembered from reading it, and then she's just kind of like, "Oh, okay, yeah, you actually did read it. Nice." So it was kind of cool.
Well, I remember from my experience in university was I was a natural, what one professor called a natural scholar, which from a professor I think is pretty much the highest compliment you can get because that's their field. When I hit the depression though, everything became a chore. I mean, everything was a chore. And I really looked back and I realized how much I had taken for granted the fact that a lot of the scholastic stuff came natural to me. Mm-hmm. I remember, for instance, in a class where I was doodling and I took like 4 or 5 point notes within an hour and a half class, right? One of my friends, he got upset with me. He's like, "What are you doing?" Because I was drawing a picture of some kind, I'm sure. And, he said, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, I'm listening. And he's like, "You're drawing pictures. You're not taking any notes. You're going to fail this class." I'm like, "No, I'm going to pass it." I said, "Listen, you got to get to know your teacher. If you take too many notes from this guy, you're going to confuse yourself when it comes time for the test. If you take a few notes of what he finds most important, that's what will be on the test." Yeah. That's the way this teacher works. I would read the teacher before I would get into the curriculum. And one class in particular, I was also taking history. You're familiar with Machiavelli, right? You've heard Machiavelli? He wrote The Prince. People cite him as Machiavellian for being really opportunistic and willing to do anything for power, basically.
Doesn't ring a bell.
Well, at any rate, when someone says you're being really Machiavellian, that's what it means. You're a power-hungry, ambitious jerk, basically. Nice. Yeah, but what I didn't know, what I was learning about him in one class, is that in another class, they brought him up as a playwright. I had no idea he had written plays. I went to school for theater, in case I haven't told you, Carl.
Yes, I recall.
And so, and I stopped the teacher in the middle of our theater history class, and I said, "So how is any of this going to relate on the test to the fact that he wrote The Prince and that he was known for this huge sort of like bringing this whole philosophy out about doing whatever it takes and ambition?" And he's like, "I don't know what you're talking about." I was like, "Well, you know, Machiavelli, right? He was famous for this." And he's like, "I don't know what you're talking about." And he didn't know. So I educated the class that day about Machiavelli, what he was famous for. And then I went back to doodling. That was before, like I say, before the depression. I was just good at all that stuff. So I think a lot for students, especially the younger ones, it's headspace. If they get distracted with all this stuff, then their efficiency goes down, their focus goes down. Whereas with yourself, you don't need to be told what to do every step of the way. You unpack as an adult. So you're being proactive. You're looking at the course, seeing the workload in advance and going, how do I want to do this? And they're waiting to be told.
Well, yeah.
I remember in college I had this oceanography course, and at the time I liked the professor, but before I took the class, but afterwards, in hindsight, I don't think he was very good at all. But this class was about 11:30, 12 o'clock, so you would eat before you went in there. And then it was this big auditorium with slides, like you would watch your friend's vacation at their house. You know what I'm saying? And he would just talk monotone for an hour and a half with slides of like these old boats and old whatever. And it was just all strictly note taking. And there was a book that was, barely even touched upon. It was more or less just, hey, you have to buy this book. And I did miserable in the class. And he would ask stuff, and you're just, for me, if someone's talking, I need to, I can't really take notes necessarily. I mean, I can, but the way he did it was, you're taking notes on something, you're going to miss the next thing he's talking about, right?
Well, he was probably just really bad at telling you with what he was saying, what was important.
He absolutely, and that was the issue. And, there was stuff that I really remember that never came up in tests. And then the stuff he was asking about was just obscure stuff he'd barely mentioned. So, I don't know. Not a good teacher in hindsight.
No.
Maybe it seemed like it was more of how much of this can you pay attention to? And then it was based on the curve as well, which it definitely favored towards people who could memorize this stuff. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
so anyways, it was I'm still pretty bitter about the whole thing.
Maybe it's a case of the professor was really good in the field and he just sucks as a teacher.
Yeah, but he was a career professor, he didn't, yeah.
Maybe he slept his way to the top?
Oh, he quinned it.
Uh-oh. I don't know if you heard about that. There's that
Zoe Quinn.
Latest fiasco about the gaming industry.
Well,
there's been this big exposure. People have brought evidence that this lady, what's her name? Zoe Quinn. She's supposed to be a journalist for gaming.
No, she's a developer.
Oh, she's a developer?
Yeah, she's a developer. She created this game called Depression Quest. Because that's what I want to play. When my wife's out of the house and my kids are in bed, I want to crack out Depression Quest. Just be like, yeah.
Do you get squads and teams online?
I don't know. This team deathmatch in Depression Quest has got to be horrible. There's a lot of nooses and kills and.
Oh man. Anyways, the point is that the fiasco going on right now is that she was sleeping with people that were doing reviews and publishing reviews, and it's this thing of people in bed with each other so that certain games and developers are promoted, but they act as if it's journalism and they claim to have integrity. And yeah, so this is big blow up going on right now.
Yeah, when the journalistic integrity of game reviewers is being called into question, when you can't even trust what's on the mainstream media, like, we're fucking done. All right, don't believe a fucking word you say. Buy a game or go and witness an event yourself and draw your own damn conclusions, because you can't trust the words of anyone else anymore.
Yeah. Why not play it and then decide if it's a good game or not?
I'll tell you why. People don't want to just go out and play the game because it costs them $90 a shot.
Yeah, well, that's true. I do like my money.
Yeah.
I don't like it when I have to spend it.
Go figure.
Well, you said you're a gamer, Carl. Which games do you play?
Oh, I'm not a hardcore gamer like, say, most people are. I just have a PlayStation 3, and I haven't played any games in a while. My kids are getting to that age where they start to play games, so there's Little Big Planet and stuff in there, and it's I'm almost afraid to But no, the games I've been playing lately, I've been playing a lot of Fallout, and I just bought Fallout 3, and I opened it up and I looked at the disc, but I haven't actually played it yet, because I know once I do that, all my free time is going to be spent doing that, right? So I haven't played it. I don't know. Well, you guys know it's different when you have kids.
Yeah.
Your free time kind of vanishes, and
taking them to friends' houses or play dates, hockey, baseball, blah 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 blah.
Yeah. My kids are actually really excited about football coming up. I like sport. I love sports, but my wife doesn't. So she said, just pick one sport, right? And I said, that's fine. I can do that, you know. And so I picked football, American football. And it's funny because I don't think I spend any less time watching sports. I think all of that time now is just dedicated to American football, right?
There was last year. There was a podcast or a bunch of you got together for your teams, right? Your fantasy league.
Oh, fantasy football.
Yeah.
We there was like a secular fantasy football league, and we're doing it again this year, and we're doing the draft tonight. Actually, making me think about it.
So explain this to me. Fantasy secular football. Are you only allowed to choose players who would be on your team who are known atheists or not religious nuts? So like you get like 4 players a team and you're done, maybe.
Not even that. Like if you get a player, you're going to infinitely outscore your opponent.
Yeah.
No, but it's just a bunch of atheist podcasters who are into football and fantasy football. So it was a good time, you know.
Who came out on top last time?
I want to say the final match came between Noah of Scathing Atheist and Cecil of Cognitive Dissonance. And I want to say Cecil won. And then Noah claimed some sort of supernatural cheating was going on, but he couldn't prove it. So
no, he didn't have the evidence. Well, now he knows what it feels like when he's talking to a believer and he says it to them.
Yeah, have some empathy now.
Yep.
But so I'll tell you, I usually just play with a bunch of chumps, and you can basically build your team off the waiver wire because everyone you pick turns out to be shit. You know what I'm saying? It's just this year so and so's hot. Where last year this guy who was hot isn't. There's some key guys who are going to be amazing, but after that, it's really a crapshoot. Well, some of these guys, Noah, Heath, Cecil, some of these guys are just amazing and just know their shit. And so by the time I'm going, oh, I should pick up that player on the waiver wire, he's already been picked up like weeks ago. It's just amazing. These guys are so I'm really painfully outclassed in the league. So what I usually do when I start losing badly is I talk shit and
get some joy out of it. Even if you don't win, you're at least getting some joy.
Exactly. So but I'm not the shit talker who is insulting you. I say it in a funny way.
Yeah.
But that's really what I bring to the party: a bye week and some humorous shit talking. So yeah, let me know if you want me on your fantasy league.
Hey, so before I forget, you've been online for a while. How did it all start? Okay, so you have been the co-host of Post Rapture Looting since it started. You guys started it together, right? You and Ben.
Yeah. How did the whole thing start?
So were you online doing stuff before that, or was it the podcast basically what?
No, not really. I don't really get into the blogs or anything like that, or YouTube. I've watched some YouTube videos that are, amazing. Non-Stamp Collector is a personal favorite of mine. Specifically What Wouldn't Jesus Do is a phenomenal YouTube video. And I revisit that every 6 months and pee myself a little bit. But no, I got into the middle-age running thing because I was painfully out of shape and getting really fat. So I started running to try to lose weight. And apparently you need to eat well and exercise, not just exercise. You don't get
that
this,
only sounds half as fun, man.
Yeah, you don't get this body without proper nutrition, let me tell you. And I started listening to podcasts. Around that time I got my wife she wanted a iPod, that's when they were the thin little tiny things. So I got her one of those, and then I would use that when I was running. And I started listening to some running podcasts, and I was like, hey, I wonder if there's any atheist podcasts out there. And that's when I, saw that there was a bunch. And so I started listening to those. And my thing was I'm listening to these shows, and they were all very good, most of them. But I really didn't feel that what I was thinking for a lot of these things were necessarily being said, right? Like when you say, people say, oh, you want to have your voice in the arena or whatever. And I don't even know if that's necessarily, I mean, I hear that as a literal thing, but it's more of a philosophical thing. I mean, the fact of the matter is there's so many easy jokes to make about these guys. And, it seemed like you were, like I'll pick on a podcast that I love is Atheist Experience. I know a lot of people have their issues with that because it's just, the same arguments over and over again. But I think it's great. I love to hear Matt Dillahunty like lose it with people and yell at them and just utterly humiliate their ignorant position, right?
Yeah.
And I love how he just cuts to the chase. And it's amazing now when I hear people talk, because I've heard this show over and over again, almost by the time they get to their second sentence, I know exactly where they're going to go, you know?
Yeah.
And I think maybe to discredit Matt a little bit, he hears it after the first sentence, and so he just starts ripping on their argument, before even I understand what their argument's going to be. And I think to somebody coming into this without a lot of experience, they need to hear the argument before they understand the counter argument to it, right? And so, maybe the Atheist Experience people could be a little bit more patient, I think, with letting these people get their arguments out. But at the same time, some of these people, they never get to the fucking point. So I don't fault them at all. It's like it can only be more perfect if it was scripted. You know what I'm saying? But it's unscripted. It's reality TV.
You heard it here first. It's all scripted. It's fake.
Yeah. Well, I agree with you, but I see where people like Dillahunty are coming from because they've heard it all before.
Yeah. Again and again and again.
And I've had that similar debate in real life with our mutual friend who I hope will be a guest on our show soon, who we know a kid who's a young earth creationist. Very sad. And
yeah, so much
I know
potential.
some as well.
Yeah. It's a decidedly more rare here. It's honestly like seeing a living dodo in Canada. Like, what the fuck? I didn't think this existed here. But they do happen, and he was introduced to me first because everyone knew my position on that shit, and they wanted to see the fireworks. And literally in our first discussion, he brought up Kent Hovind as like a reputable source for his opinion, and I was done. I like literally from that point forward, I had nothing positive to say about any of his arguments because they were all based on Kent Hovind's bullshit. So it was one of my other friends who said, maybe you should let him finish an argument and maybe, he would be able to change your mind on some things or open up a dialogue.
Surprise you where he goes with it, maybe.
And I'm like, I don't need to hear something that I've already personally heard 100 times before or more and have equally in all cases utterly destroyed, and who other people have equally and even better than I have destroyed those arguments.
Well, I know back in the day when I watched it, there was before I basically had my issues with Matt, there was a video where he went and he did explain that he was apologizing. It was a pretty rare occurrence to people that listen, not to the guy he talked to specifically, but that he felt personally disappointed in himself on one episode that I had watched where he lost it on a guy. And he said, I think the way I did it and the way I shut him down and everything the way it unfolded was less about the fact that he was saying things that deserved it and more about the fact that I'd heard it before and I was personally irritated. So, I mean, it's got to get under your skin if you do it all the time. It's almost...
Yeah, you imagine these guys, I mean, every other week they're doing the show, right? Because they have a rotation. And, let's be honest, the Christian apologetics are tired. I mean, how many times has someone said, "Oh wow, you're an atheist"? Well, what if you're wrong?
Yeah.
What if you guys actually, talked about the fact that, every one of you has already, been given an explanation, why you should be more worried if you're wrong, right?
Yeah.
And it's just baffling. Like they don't talk, and the thing about apologetics, and I'm a rambler, so my apologies to everyone. But Corey knew that getting into it.
Yeah,
so.
all good podcasters ramble. That's the way it works.
We got to fill these 8 hours up somehow. But oh shit, I forgot what I was going to say now.
Also very common for podcasters.
the Atheist Asshole Show.
I've been extremely fascinated over the last 2 to 3 years with what is now called social justice and feminism and stuff. And quite a bit of it I actually conceptually completely agree with, but I often find the execution of the ideas or the criticism of other ideas I don't agree with, but I do find fascinating. And one of the things is humor, because I feel like I have seen many people over the last few years basically just say, this is not funny, you cannot talk about this.
I'm not a professional comic, so
right. I'm obviously not either.
But I'm thinking about the Affleck guy. What's his name?
Godfrey.
Godfrey with his sushi joke, which was fun.
I don't think I heard that one.
Oh, so he lost his job at Affleck because after the tsunami came and fucked up Japan, he said, yeah, in Japan, where he made a joke about sitting in your house waiting for a little boat to come by with sushi on it.
Right. I do. I remember the incident.
Yeah. And I don't know his wording. It was funny and well played. And he tweeted it, and you had the politically correct police on the internet get all offended, and they yanked his job at Affleck.
Well, I'll just cut in until you remember, and if you remember, just cut me off. But I was going to say that I think part of the problem is that, like, look at it from an educational standpoint. A math teacher or an elementary school teacher doesn't get tired of teaching the same lesson over and over. Well, they probably do, but they don't appear to be, because they realize that each class coming in doesn't understand the information that they're about to teach.
Yeah, well, that's true.
If atheist debaters and thinkers kind of took that position with each individual segment of Christians or believers that came at them, perhaps they would get a little less angry that they don't already understand why their argument is flawed. But they're coming.
But here's the problem, though, is that you don't have a class that wants to learn what you have to say.
Yeah, that's the difference.
You have a class that wants to argue that you're wrong.
But
right? You are outnumbered. And the point I was going to make that I forgot, that I now remember, is apologetics aren't necessarily, I don't believe that they're designed to change anyone's mind.
No.
I think that they're designed to reinforce the beliefs that you already have.
Or at least keep that one little window open where you can say, you can't absolutely prove me wrong, so therefore my beliefs can exist.
Right, the God of the Gaps argument, of course.
Yeah.
Well, no, and I get what you're saying. Like, I mean, I think for me, when I'm talking to somebody who believes this stuff, like this friend of ours, I'm going to let him say his name when he comes on, but it's kind of like arguing with somebody who still thinks that smoking is good for you. When the information is out there that it really kind of kills you, dude.
Yeah. And they use the technicalities of what exactly kills you. Oh, it was actually your heart giving it.
Yeah.
Well, yes.
Like, I mean, I would have the same anger arguing with somebody who says that the world is still flat.
Right.
Or we're the center of the universe.
Climate change deniers, or homeopathy, alternative medicine is real. They're going to go with their anecdotal evidence, and they have, what's it called when you only see the evidence that supports you, but you discount the evidence that doesn't? What's
special pleading?
No, it's whatever. But you get the point.
Yeah.
At some point, they don't understand the logic that they're wrong at. And when you try to explain, and here's the thing that really absolutely is frustrating to me, is when I'm arguing with a Christian believer, that they come at you with, and somehow in one sentence they can make 10 arguments, right? And then you're like, okay, well, which one of those do you want to talk about? Right. And then they go, we want to talk about the first one. You go, okay, well, your logic on the first one is wrong because X, Y, Z. And here's an example of how your logic could be used in a way that is wrong. They go, okay, fine. Well, what about 2? It's like they don't even say, okay, fine. Then they just jump right to 2. Right.
Yeah.
They don't, it's like, no, acknowledge the fact that your logic is flawed. Right. And until you acknowledge that fact, there's really no reason for me to continue this conversation.
Yeah.
And that's how I'm getting with them, is you're wrong. This is why I think you're wrong. Here's the logic. And if you don't acknowledge that, tell me my logic is flawed, and I've heard that before, and maybe the examples I gave were not great examples, but they're they're just examples. They're not necessarily, a thesis I wrote for, a philosophy course or something. This is the logic that, like the God is Not Dead movie guy. I thankfully didn't see that movie.
Kevin Sorbo?
Yeah, Zorbo. I don't think I'd be able to sit through that movie without, screaming at the television.
Christian movies now are apparently becoming a place for washed up actors to try and make
their career further.
Yeah, well, that's not the way they see it, but you're absolutely right. Sorbo is one, and now he's like making comments in public as if he's some kind of authority on anything.
I guess he said something really racist too about Ferguson, Missouri. Which,
yeah,
it's like, dude, But he's an actor. He's not a politician, right? Well, they do and say stupid things as well.
He's certainly not a philosopher anyway.
Yeah,
or a decent person.
But he is a believer, so there we are.
And he's going to heaven.
What was it? I was watching some of the coverage online about Ferguson, and John Oliver did a 15-minute report on that I thought was actually really, really well done, talking about how the police departments across the United States are buying all of this, or being granted all of this military equipment. And it was good. I'll let you guys watch it, but it was pretty decent. I like it when comics like that actually do the news better than the
that's
news.
Amazing, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's sad.
Yeah.
No,
I'm really laughing about it, but it is.
It's embarrassing, right? I mean, I've worked for international companies in my lifetime, English company, an Australian company, and I remember that one of the common things that they would ask you as an American is, what's up with your media, and I'm just like, I don't know. I'm so sorry, right? It's like our media sucks in America. I don't know how much better it is in Canada, but I remember they were saying, well, if you watch BBC, it's kind of more neutral as far as how it reports stuff. And I get that there's going to be bias, wherever you're getting your news from, but the BBC, strides to not have that bias. Right. And I remember I was trying to watch the BBC one time and they were talking about this guy in the situation, but they never mentioned who the guy was. They just mentioned his name as if everyone already knew who he was. It's like, hey guys, Americans are watching your show too. Yeah. We don't know what the fuck is this. You're assuming a base level of knowledge that we just don't have, right? It's like, yeah. I don't know. I these days I mostly get my news from reading AP and Reuters online. Watching TV news, especially local news, was causing me a lot of stress and drama. Right? Because what do they always start with, so and so died, and I used to only watch it just for the weather, and now it's like, I just get the weather on my smartphone. But it was amazing when I stopped watching the news that within a couple of weeks my general anxiety level.
Yeah, this is a problem, right? Because news, when it started out, well, first of all, you had like the town crier or official stuff being sent out, maybe from the king or
4 o'clock and all's well.
Crazy rapist free in the neighborhood. But now it permeates, and it's not just in written; it's visuals, music, ominous music. Like the show will start now in your local news. 4 people shot dead. Let's talk about all these horrible things that are going on, and then they might have a little fluff piece where it's like how to bake a cookie.
Yeah, and those are paid advertisements as well, right? People will, Nestle will do basically a commercial that looks like a news piece, and then they will pay your local news station to play it.
That's nasty.
And I remember reading this article about it, and I was like, what? And at the time, I was still watching the local news, and they said the way you could tell was you didn't have any of your regular news people from your show on this bit. And and they would just jump over to it, and the transitions would be a little off. It wasn't your news station's transitions, and I started to notice that, and I was like, wow, this is amazing. This is, like you open up a magazine and they have the commercials that look like it's a news story in the magazine. They're just trying to trick people. It's dishonest.
What I'm trying to understand is, like, I've met people who are taking journalism. And when they go into it, they're like, I'm going to change the fucking world, man. I'm going to go and I'm going to expose shit and I'm going to get it out there so that people know. And like, I'm going to change the world, you know? And then when they get in there and they realize that it's a corporate entity like any other corporate entity and you have to appease the higher ups and not step on too many feet, like, how many of them leave? How many of them are chosen to be the public faces of the media because they're just willing to say whatever it is they want to say? Or how many of them believe that they are actually doing a service to journalism?
Yeah, and then you've accrued all this debt for your education, and then you find out the industry is corrupt, if you will, and it's certainly not what you wanted it to be. You don't have the freedom to do what you want to do. And at the end of the day, you're going there to get a paycheck, and you have to follow orders to get a paycheck. And, but sadly, that's true for just about any profession you get into,
Well, it used to be, though, that if you could be demonstrated that you weren't properly sourcing your material, or that you're coming with a bent, or you were trying to silence or force your people to say something, any of those things, if that went public, with someone had evidence that your news agency was doing that would be like a bomb exploding in the middle of your office. It would be devastating. But now it's just kind of expected that this is happening. So there's been a huge shift in the way that journalism is, it functions, completely different function in society.
Yeah, journalistic integrity right now in this day and age is like asking to find a square circle. Like, they don't exist.
What's important to me, that's where skepticism comes in, right? What's important to me is if you're going to have an article, that's fine, but have some sources. Like, tell me where you're getting the information. It's obviously one thing when it's just an interview and you're talking to somebody. But if you're going to make claims that, like the left and the right are always battling with each other, have some sources. Like, tell me why it is that I should believe you or the other guy, and you're both saying opposite things.
Yeah,
that's where you measure everything out.
But see, as long as the public is not educated on what a preponderance of evidence is and why it's required to justify a position, I don't think they need to provide that evidence because the public doesn't care or they don't know why the evidence is important. Wouldn't you agree?
I mean, look at Fox News as the standard to which all news media outlets should hold themselves to in regards to profitability, right? I mean, Fox News, say what you will, it doesn't matter what is coming out of their mouths. They are there to talk to a certain demographic and tell them what they want to hear.
Yeah.
Right. And if Obama were to, fix everything in the world today, they, their viewership doesn't want to hear that. Their viewership wants to hear how Obama screwed up America in the process of fixing America. And because that's what their demographic believes. Yeah. And the same thing for MSNBC. And it's sad because people live in a world where people, I should say, just want it to have their beliefs reconfirmed, right? And so that is more important than the truth, and that makes money.
Well, for sure. You're right. You could wake up tomorrow morning, your national debt could be paid off, world peace is declared, and they'd be like, "We told you that Filipino-born non-American was colluding with the Fed and the World Bank and everything to become the leader of the NWO and take over the world. He's the Antichrist," and they wouldn't care. It's completely irrational.
That's why Weird Al wears his foil hat.
Yeah, that was a great video. that was a brilliant song as well. My hat off to Mr. Weird Al.
I'm more of a fan of word crimes.
Yeah, the whole release of these things, everything that he did it so well. It was media.
He's keeping with the times. He's using the medium that people are using to get it out there, and he's doing it well.
And again,
I'm sure he has people who he's working with, but he definitely knows who his fans are.
Yeah.
Right. And, you know, we are those people who are online and will be sharing his videos. Right.
Yep.
So, yeah, he knows his demographic very well. And I don't think Katy Perry would necessarily have the same level of success that he did if she did it that way. Right. Because her fans are not geeks necessarily, you know?
Yeah.
No.
Well, I mean, there are things about her that geeks love.
Yeah.
I can think of at least two.
She, like many other female pop stars, are amazing entertainers on mute. Mute. I will watch a video from start to finish. I don't need to hear what she's saying.
I'm convinced that's why the Spanish station has a bunch of attractive women. If I knew what they were saying,
I wouldn't leave the station on for a few hours every day.
The Spanish station. I love Spanish stations. They're fucking hilarious.
And the children's shows are just amazing. Yes.
So I think we sidetracked a little bit. So you were talking originally about
what got me into podcasting.
Yeah.
So I'm running, I'm listening to podcasts, and I'm thinking, and I'm a computer geek by trade, so I thought, you know, I could get a crappy microphone and record an MP3, and you know, so I started to just kind of research it or whatever. I wanted to do my own podcast, but as you know, it's hard to do it just by yourself, you know, so I would need someone to do it with. And I didn't really know anybody necessarily in the online world who'd want to do it, who I would trust to be available, you know, every week or whatever. And so I asked a buddy of mine to do it, and it was Ben, who I started working with, and we became friends outside of work. And invariably, you know, the topic came up, and I was like, yeah, I'm not religious. He's like, oh, neither am I. We're like, oh my God, brother, you know, and friends for life. And so I said, hey, I'm going to do a podcast, and I want you to, you know, do the co-host. And he's like, okay. So yeah, so we started doing it, and that was 101 episodes. And
yeah, congrats, you know, by the way, on going to 101.
Yeah, that was a lot. You know, and it was interesting when I was on my sabbatical, I was kind of just, you know, spending a lot of time with the family and doing stuff, seeing many things. And what little idle time I had, just thinking about, you know, shit going on in my life and stuff. And I was like, you know, that podcast is, you know, it was a lot of time and energy that I figured I just needed to take a break from, you know, and Post Rapture Looting is a fun podcast to do. And, you know, Ben's you know, he's really funny and stuff, but I don't know if it really encapsulated really like the friendship that we have, you know what I'm saying? And I think when you turn the microphone on, for us anyways, like, I don't know, like, we had really good conversations about religion and its impact on the world and everything. And it seemed like whenever we turned on the microphone, you know, out came the dick and fart jokes, you know, I don't know what it was. But,
well, that's what our friendship is. And when we turn on the microphone, the dick and fart jokes decrease for some reason. That's weird. We have the opposite effect.
Yeah, you know, like, sorry to interrupt, but it's kind of true that, you know, amongst the circle of friends, I'm not the most controversial in my statements, but I'm a bit of a rough around the edges in conversation. But it seems that every time I'm on mic, I'm weirdly held back, and I don't know why. Like, I'm sitting in Corey's basement, and I guess I'm worried that
he's often like, next time, you know what we should do? We should talk about this and this and this. And all these, this will get people upset.
Yeah, I do. I think people need to be made upset so that A, they'll listen.
Yeah,
and two, I don't want to be controversial just for the sake of being controversial, but some of the points that I espouse in my day-to-day life, I really truly believe would be helpful to the general populace if they just heard it, and even if it made them mad, as long as they take the time to consider the position.
Yeah, well, I've told people that even if you don't like what we say, you know, give us feedback anyway. I don't care.
Yeah.
I want to hear what you have to say.
Yeah, I was actually a little disappointed, you know, doing the podcast for as long as we did, to, I don't think I ever got a single piece of hate mail, you know?
Oh, but I do owe you an apology.
Me? What'd I do?
Do you remember our first interaction ever? You're talking about not getting any negative feedback. You had, this is way back in the day, Lee was still trying to organize the peace talks, and you guys had him on your show. And somehow, I don't know, I was driving my truck, somehow I completely misunderstood what he was saying. And so my comment was really lambasting him, and especially him, but also you guys. I'm like, you guys should have asked some tougher questions, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. I was just being a dick. And then...
Oh, that was on the webpage.
Yeah.
Oh, so that was you.
Yeah, that was me. Yeah. It's now you remember me. And then I heard him, like right after that, I listened to an episode of Reapso, and he was on there talking about the same stuff. I was like, this sounds completely different than what I was taking away from the other show. I went back and listened to some of it again. I realized I had just somehow completely missed the thread of what you guys are saying.
Yeah. So
I went back to delete my comment, and he had already commented back, so he'd seen it. And he was like, well, you can think what you want to think, but I'm going to say this and this and this. So instead of deleting it like I was trying to hide it, I just put an apology there. But I didn't apologize to you guys, so here's my apology.
Oh, well, I was
just being a dick.
I mean, yeah, you guys have probably all heard of some of the big stories like elevator gates and how poorly that was handled by all involved.
Right.
People like to toss blame on one side or another in that, but for the vast majority of us who looked at it objectively, it was everybody had anything to do with that situation was an error in some way, shape, or form. It could have been handled so much better. But it wasn't, and it was blown out of proportion and turned into a big point of contention for atheists. You fast forward along, and along the ways, more little things like that happened back and forth. And we started forming into these pseudo-camps. Like one of the major blogging sites, Free Thought Blogs, they even had some people split off and form a forum called the Slime Pit, which is pretty much has a similar view to me about censorship, but a little less respectful. But still, I don't have a problem with it.
Yeah, it's kind of grown to a point where you have people who disagree, and it's like they're being really critical of each other, and it's like almost seems like everyone needs to take a step back and remember we're all on the same fucking team.
Well, it's funny because I've been reading internet emails and chats long enough to not take it personal,
Yeah.
And so when I read that, I was like, wow, this person seemed, upset, right? But then I just kind of like filtered out the angry part of it, and listened to what you said, and I was like, okay, well, maybe has a point. And I really honestly looked at that. I was like, you know what? Maybe I'm giving Lee too much of the benefit of the doubt there, right? And so that's how I actually took it. So I didn't, so I to say I haven't gotten any negative response is probably not true because I've talked to you.
Yeah, there was at least one dick who was ranting on.
But
I didn't tell Smashlog I had done that, so that's probably news to him.
That's funny. No, I didn't know. That's hilarious. But no, it was funny because I remember you had commented later, like, oh, and I was like, whoa, because I thought Lee's response was kind of a dick move himself, right? and I was like, okay, well, I'll let you two, have a kumbaya moment. I'll just, not continue to not care. And but I don't know. I kind of liked the fact that someone was actually against what we had done or said, right? And it kind of kept me in check. It kind of kept me grounded a little bit too, because it's really easy as an atheist to get kind of full of yourself because you're obviously winning the argument, right?
Yeah.
Because unless Jesus himself is making the argument, you're probably going to win the argument, right?
Yeah.
And so it's really easy as an atheist to get cocky so I'm rambling and going a lot, which is also a skill that I have. But no, I read your comment, and it kind of helped keep me grounded a little bit, and it helped me maybe not jump down somebody's throat, albeit they're not there. I'm just reading a news article, but yeah.
Well, I think that speaks to your character, man. That's what I kind of hope I'll do if someone starts coming at us. The only thing we've had as far as negative goes is we had one of our listeners say that sometimes our sound samples that we drop in, that I drop in there are jarring. He said, I said I would try to make them less jarring. I've tried to control the audio difference more. I thought maybe that's what he meant. But as far as them being like sometimes they're just funny. I was just dropping a funny one. Sorry, that's probably going to keep happening because it's my bizarre sense of humor.
Well, I'll tell you what, I really like your podcast, and I look forward to hearing it. With all sincerity, I like how you inject sound bites between the interview with people.
Yeah.
And I'm actually, I've been thinking about this for the last couple of weeks, knowing I was going to do the interview with you guys. Like, what the hell is he going to pull out of from our podcast? And I'm a little scared.
I should put a sound sample right here. I'll have to remember to do that later.
Oh, shit.
Like
But,
my only criticism of our own podcast, I'm allowed to criticize our own podcast.
Yeah, I'll cry it later when you hurt my feelings.
It seems like a bit of a circle jerk sometimes. Like we've had a lot of other atheist podcasters on, so it's a whole lot of everyone agreeing with everyone else. And I think that's part of the problem is that it's hard to be controversial when the guy sitting across from you agrees with about 90% of what you're saying.
So that's probably why you're eager to get some people on there that have a different point of view.
Well, like I think.
Well, Smashlock, how about this? Your T-shirt's dumb, okay?
It's white.
Let's get some controversy up in this show.
No, like don't get me wrong. I like getting the perspective of people who hold the same position I do, because sometimes listening to a person like yourself or a couple of our other guests that have been on. Their names elude me at this very moment, not because I don't remember them, but because I don't remember them right now.
Lee, Brian, Alan, Terry.
Yeah, thank you. Sometimes they come at an argument in a way that I never would have thought of.
Yeah.
Or they heard an argument that I haven't heard before, and that kind of broadens my horizon in how to approach future arguments with believers.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's merit in it. But I also look at it from the standpoint, if I were listening to the show from the time we started it to now, how much tension has there been? Because sometimes you can get listening onto those shows where you're having a disagreement and you just know that there's a fucking fuse that's been lit. And it's a matter of time before somebody goes, no, you're wrong, and here's why you're wrong, and you go down the chain.
Well, the theme that we've kind of got is apostasy, right? So, I mean, anyone who listens to the show know that you and I we're atheists, we're skeptics. The people I bring on the show, I do want to have some people have a different opinion from us and hash out the differences.
Yeah.
And that's where I think that you're thinking that your controversial side's going to flourish.
Oh, yes.
But, I get what you're saying as well, in spite of your T-shirt. Because, I mean, I had the same thought for our podcast, because when I would listen to podcasts, I actually really enjoyed it when one podcaster would be on another guy's show, right?
Yeah.
And I really enjoyed that back and forth, because you got to hear things that weren't brought up because they just weren't brought up when you do it that way. Like if Larry King was to interview David Letterman or something, there might be some questions, things that one of them would say that they otherwise wouldn't have said, sort of when you're with your peers at work, that conversation's a little bit different than if you have to talk to a customer, let's say, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But I actually really enjoy that part of it. But I thought about the same thing. To another point you made is how much of it is just an echo chamber, right? Yeah. And then taking that thought, even going down that bunny trail more, is doing a podcast for atheism, if you will. How much of it is actually permeating outside of our own little circle of people, right? And do you care about that? And it was kind of a sad moment. I was thinking, I was like, wow, we're just, it occurred to me when I went to the American Atheist Convention last year, 2013. And I remember looking at all these people, and there was about 1,000 people at that conference. And it was a good time, but I had to really wonder, it's like, wow, there's only 1,000 people here. I mean, how many are we in numbers? And, we're getting these presentations that were really, a lot of them were top notch. But it was really for a small select group of people, and you're not really changing anyone's mind. Like and so you could take a show like Dogma Debate or Thinking Atheist, which are, great podcasts. And what those guys are doing is, they get out to the outside world infinitely more than I ever did. And I think when I do my podcast, or I did my podcast, you know, I didn't really care about that so much. I was just trying to be making dumb jokes for my fellow atheists and just bringing up just these insane news stories that will not stop appearing on my feed. You know, like the Westboro Baptist Church wants to go protest ISIS in Iraq. You know, it's like,
please.
Man, I wish they would.
Yeah, do it.
This
I'm not
Australian
above that.
comedian said he would buy their plane tickets for them.
Fuck yeah.
And so they said they would go. Now, will they is a whole nother story, you know, but I think, you know, maybe Ferguson, Missouri police should go on a road trip and force them on a plane, personally. But, you know, now, you know, maybe they could do some good, but...
take all the evil and put it into the most positive combination possible.
Right.
You know. Yeah, like, don't get me wrong. I mean, on a previous episode, I believe this was the episode with Rob Price.
Okay.
I said that what's happening now... No, it was Anton Hill. I said that right now what it seems like is that even though the internet's been around for a little over 2 decades, commercially available, the atheist community has been able to build a community where before we were really decentralized. Like there was no large enough collective to feel like you were part of something that kept you shielded from the constant outside forces to not be an atheist. And so podcasts like ours and like yours and the many others, I think, are part of that reinforcement that is required to make you feel like you're part of a community, that you're not alone where you are, even if you're hundreds of miles away from the next nearest atheist, or even if you're living across the street from one who is equally remaining quiet because you live in a highly religious community. Yeah. So, I mean, there's merit to what these type of podcasts that don't get out to the outside world are doing, I think. But, I mean, me personally, I thrive in an environment where people want to argue. Because, and I guess, I know you don't.
Yes, I do.
Oh, yeah, you do.
Excuse me, I came here for an argument, not to be insulted.
No, you didn't.
You know, part of the advantage I would see in having a guest on eventually that has the theistic point of view or a different philosophical point of view, whatever it is that for the listener, if you're just coming into atheism and you're listening to the wide array of different podcasts where podcasters have other podcasters on, people who agree with one another, then there is no education or understanding of how a discussion should go with somebody who holds a different position than you, right, aside from listening to somebody agree with somebody else about how they handled it, or watching Matt Delahunty, or watching Aaron Ra or Thunderfoot on YouTube, and then you get the way they do it. But then, I'm sorry, I'm a smart guy. I don't need people to tell me I'm smart. I'm pretty sure I am. But you can, you're not. But it is easy to feel intimidated by the scientist guys or the people who have 1 million subscribers and go, wow, I will never argue as well as them. I'm just going to stay quiet and know that I'm right. Yay. I feel very, very...
Huddle in the corner. Please don't hit me with your PhD.
You know, it's funny, or interesting. Well, I think it's interesting for me anyways. Atheist experience really clarified how to debate, right? When I was younger, I never went through any debate training, anything. It seemed very intimidating to me. I could smell, like, things would fail the smell test for me, right? Like Pascal's wager, it didn't pass the sniff test, right? But I couldn't explain why it failed the sniff test. And atheist experience introduced to me logical fallacies, and you know, that there was actually a word for these things. And, you know, this is what this logical fallacy is, and this is, you know, here's an example of how it's used, and here's why it's wrong, and blah, blah, blah. And that was, to me, so eye-opening, because now I could say not only does it smell wrong, but this is why it doesn't smell wrong, and I could explain it, right? Yeah. And I lacked that ability to explain why I thought your argument was dumb. I would just say, your argument's dumb, I don't believe it. And they would go, well, why not? And, I wouldn't be able to say, right? So somehow, because I couldn't extrapolate, how to articulate why your argument is wrong, that I somehow like lost the argument, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And sadly, now that I'm able to articulate and explain, logically why their argument is invalid, I still have not won the debate. You know what I'm saying? But at least I feel better about myself that I can explain why it is.
Yep.
And it's like, look, if your God is real, if this is all real, then how come you can't explain it to me? How come your arguments are dumb? And it's just frustrating, and
so maybe the part of the podcast was all about that for you. I think that's totally valid. I mean, you're talking about an echo chamber. First of all, I think there's a difference between an incidental echo chamber and an intentional one. There's a sadistic kind of Fox News type of echo chamber, which is designed just to prey on people. It has in my opinion, a very negative influence. But if you happen to be reaching out there, like for me, when I was a truck driver, I'd listen to podcasts like yours. It would help me keep a little bit of sanity while I was out on the road, to have, these voices I could listen to voices. Now I sound insane. But as everyone can hear, Carl's a real person, so I'm not as insane as you thought.
No, I'm not.
No, I'm not. Oh, and before I forget, I just realized, today's the 24th, right?
Yes.
So today when we are recording this is the 1 year anniversary from our first episode going up.
Nice.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah, 1 year anniversary.
Yay!
I didn't buy you anything.
Isn't the gift paper for 1 year? Isn't that the...
Nice. I got an extra cup. There you go,
nice.
buddy. There's nothing in it.
I have a coffee cup. Yay! I'll give it to you back, then we've each given each other something.
It's your house. You can give me something by throwing that out for me later.
All right, perfect. Recycling. A gift of recycling.
Yes. I don't know. Controversy, sometimes it's bad. It's not like I'm going to go on here and expect to say something that is just so offensive that, everyone's like, wow, we're never going to listen to you again because that asshole just crossed the line.
Well, eventually there will be people who do that, who they listen to our show and they're like, this particular issue, the way they talk about it. So that's one thing about choosing apostasy. I listen to a lot of shows on skepticism, on atheism, and I chose apostasy specifically in the larger sense because what I found when I was online, that was the main theme I'd always have with discussions, is that when I get into it with someone, it was always, let's challenge our preconceived notions in ways that sometimes are considered really bad to talk about. You're not supposed to talk about this, or you're not supposed to challenge this idea. So it's kind of like skepticism, but with that sacred cow type of element where you're... So our guests that way, I've had believers on here, and the topic we're talking about aren't their beliefs.
Yeah. For me, a lot of the topics I probably would talk about have nothing to do with apostasy, which is another reason why I kind of duck and dodge them. I mean, we've talked about fucking just about anything, video games, and even today we mentioned Zoe Quinn. I couldn't give a shit whether or not she sucked dick to get to the top. Honestly, I don't. She cheated on her boyfriend. Cool. She's a developer of a shitty game who got good reviews because, she swallowed whatever. I don't care.
It's on her resume.
But you know what? At the end of the day, it's the quality of work that's important. Your sex life is not important, right? It's almost like we're kind of growing to a point where it's okay if people are gay, right? I mean, I never cared, right? But society's evolving to not caring if you're gay. Yeah. But all of a sudden, if you're, sleeping around, that's this horrible, terrible thing. And it's like, well, what does it matter if the person's gay or, sleeping around? At the end of the day, is their quality of work good? Because I'm not married to this person, so I don't care, right? And it's like the whole Bill Clinton thing, Like, I don't care that he slept around with Monica Lewinsky, right? Or had oral or whatever. At the end of the day, he did a pretty good job as president, right?
And she did pretty good as a fellatio artist. It was on her dress, like obviously.
For king and country.
Now, was he perfect? No. And, and part of not being perfect was what he did with Monica, but I'm not going to obsess on that, right? I'm looking at him as a whole. How did he because I don't give a shit. I really don't, you know?
Yeah,
So.
I agree with you. I don't. Like, I mean, I'm sorry to bring up Zoe Quinn. I know it's not the chosen topic.
The specific problem, though, is bias, though. Isn't that what it was about?
Well, yeah, it's bias. Like, I mean, sure, whatever, but there's bias in everything. There's bias in the news. There's bias on television media. There's bias in what I fucking buy for toothpaste.
But like with what he said, Bill Clinton, it's unlikely that her blowjobs were in order to, I think she was Jewish background, to help the Jewish Congress. Right? I think the difference is that they're saying that her sex life directly influenced the type of output that the media was giving about
her work. Yeah, but see, honestly,
I'm not obsessing about it either. Yeah. I'm just saying, I think that was what everyone was getting upset about.
Feminists, like Anita Sarkeesian and others, kind of jumped on board this whole controversy and said, oh, you're slut-shaming her, you're doing this, patriarchy, keeping her down. And I'm like, look, I don't care. I would never slut-shame. She wants to be a slut. Yeah. If I say, okay, fine, you're a slut, whatever, cool. I don't care. I love care.
Sluts. They're great.
You know?
Hey, I'm gonna be right back. I'm gonna get a drink of water.
Okay. Yeah, no problem. I'm gonna keep going on this one though. Yeah. But like, honestly, I don't care. Whatever. If she is so good in bed that these guys are willing to lie to thousands of people who read their shit about how good her game is, then she's got a talent. She's just applying it wrong.
That's right. It's the application that's misguided.
She really, really wants to be a video game designer. I understand you have dreams, but what you should really be doing is giving head professionally.
Or if it works that well, maybe politics.
Politics. And if that is her gift in life, then have at her. Just go to work, Yeah.
That's what I've said too. Like, you think I'm slut shaming? Like, you got me totally misread there. That doesn't make no sense if you knew me at all.
Yeah.
Carl interviews Emery and Heather Henderson of the Ardent Atheist podcast.
Wish that people would learn that rape jokes aren't funny to them is the accurate sentence. You hear it all the time. Paul Provenza posted a really funny internet meme, or just one panel joke of Jesus confounded on how to put together an IKEA product, which was just a cross and nails. And it was a really funny one. And some woman on his Twitter just kind of came unglued on him about how offensive it was during Christmas time. Now, she didn't say during Christmas time, of course, but that's part of what drove her indignation. How furious she got. And finally I said, I don't remember how I worded it, but I said, hey, Provenz, I think the joke is pretty funny. What do you have in, I asked Provenz, I go, what do you have in a rape/baby Jesus joke? And then he responded with something funny, but she came unfucking glued. And could you? Yeah, and it's the same bullshit. I mean, if you think that violence in video games begets violence in the real world, if you think that that's going to make your kid a serial killer, then do yourself a favor. Don't let your fucking kid play the violent video games.
Right. Actually, may I interrupt you for a moment? It's well documented that Hitler was a huge fan of Doom.
I wish I spoke German, because I want to know what the German word for doom is.
Castle Wolfenstein.
And the worst part is as a guy, like, I mean, you can't say, all right, she wants to sleep around to get ahead. You are welcome to. I am not putting any moral or ethical blocks on your want or wish to get ahead and the methods you use to do it. And if I do that, it's like, oh, well, you're just objectifying her. What do you mean I'm objectifying her? I'm not even involved with the chick. I don't know her. I wouldn't play her game. It doesn't matter to me. Yeah. I don't even like blue hair. I don't want to fuck Smurfette. Like, just leave me alone. But there's almost a no-win scenario that plays out. If you point out that she's a horrible person, which I don't think she is, like, I don't know her. Yeah. But if, whatever, she chose to do this and cheat on her boyfriend to get ahead, fine. Whatever. I don't care.
So it's funny, this feminist thing, and I the topic. I was talking to my wife about it and how there's these, someone I heard, it was a girl called it this, and it made me laugh, but these nose ring feminists and who are just, over the top extreme, right?
Yeah,
and
the radical radicals, yeah.
And my wife was saying how like real feminists, it's actually like something that they're aware of as a problem. And they're realizing that it's actually hurting women when these extreme people are out there, and they're taking steps to try to kind of deal with that problem. So it's just kind of interesting. The Fox News feminists they're going to start getting attacked by other women. And I don't know, maybe they'll blame, accuse them of patriarchy or whatever the hell it is.
Yeah.
But,
so they call
it's funny because it's all the same tactics, when you hear this stuff. And, they defamation of character, the ad hominem, whatever you want to call it, these arguments for these extreme views are not really founded in anything logical.
Or outright conspiracy theory, like the patriarchy, the way they use it. Like, if you want to use it in a historical context, I'm not going to argue with you. There are still vestiges of the influence of the way women were treated. There's still progress that can be made. I'm willing to have those discussions. But
So this is something. So a question I like to ask other atheists is, what is the best? Not necessarily it's an argument that's accurate, but what is the best argument for theism that you've heard, right? And I think as time goes on, maybe that argument will change and whatever. And best isn't necessarily the most logical or whatever. The best being the most influential. And I don't know the name of this logical fallacy, but it drives me mad because I see it a lot from people who like to argue politics from one side or the other, where they'll use a word that has multiple meanings and they'll set up their first argument with the first meaning of the word and then twist it so that they'll make a point that favors them using an alternative meaning of the word. Yeah. So they get you to agree in definition A and then use definition B for this word. And it just drives me up the fucking wall.
Yeah.
Did I get you there, Smashlock?
Yeah. He was giving me a grimace here.
I just had an argument with a friend, unrelated to religion. What was it, like 5 days ago? And we went through probably about 2 hours of discussion, and then finally I was like, you know what, fine. In the most extreme example, in the most ridiculous, unlikely scenario that you were presenting me, yes, a person could be made to do anything. But in the context of here and now, and who I am at this point, no, I would not do this thing that we're discussing. And then he's like, okay, fine.
Was it fellatio?
No, it was
rape. He was talking about raping.
Rape.
Anyway,
to be fair, I did bring up the example of rape, but then we ran with that, and he was trying to kind of draw an example of scenarios where I could be tortured into it or forced into it or my family threatened and then do it. Just extreme examples. If terrorists did this and had a gun to your wife's head, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
And then finally I just said, all right, look, in the most extreme circumstances, could I be puppeteered into doing it? Yes. Would I ever willingly, knowledgeably do it as I am right now?
Of sound mind.
Sound mind and of my current mental faculties? No. And then what happened was, and you're talking, to clarify, you're talking about equivocation. So what happened was that he was like, all right, so if you can be made to do anything, you will do anything. And that was his equivocation. He jumped from, all right, you can agree that in this extreme circumstance, you could be made to do this, which means you will do this under a circumstance. And I'm like, no, willingness and being forced to do it are two mutually exclusive propositions.
Plus, once you have to hit someone's head with a rock till parts of the brain come out.
Yeah.
to do it. Is it the same person? I mean, really, are they the same person without part of their brain functioning? Or
Yeah,
it was ridiculous.
Yeah, it was a ridiculous. But yeah, you're talking about equivocation, and that happens to me in arguments a lot.
But he's specifically talking about switching a language, like a word, right? So
yeah.
I know semantics plays into that, but I'm not sure what the fallacy would be called.
Equivocation. Equivocation is classified as an informal logical fallacy. It is the misleading use of a term with more than one meaning or sense.
Okay.
It generally occurs in polysemic words.
Okay, yeah.
So,
thank you, Google.
Yeah, well, I knew it was equivocation. I just wanted to look up the definition.
Yeah.
But yeah, like that happens all the time. All the time. It's the same thing that Christians do when we're talking about the difference between
beliefs.
Beliefs or theory.
Yeah.
Theory in the general use and theory in a scientific term.
I have switched.
Right. And that's a great example of how they I don't want to say purposely, although I think some of them do. It just really comes down to they don't understand the word theory has multiple meanings within context, right? And you almost want to say stop using the word theory. You don't. It doesn't mean what you think it means.
I don't think that word means what you think it means. With the word belief, it gets so wacky with them that I have started using the word confidence. I put my confidence in such and such, and as opposed to using belief, which they always associate with your feelings.
Yeah.
I feel God's real and I believe, and you feel science is real, so you believe. It's like, no, I put my confidence in the evidence that's presented within scientific theories. That is.
See, here's, and this is like another argument that drives me crazy is where, oh fuck, I just lost it. They have to make these arguments for their belief that are not actually from their Bible, right? I mean, the basic instructions before leaving Earth here, should be good enough to prove their existence of their God, right? And yet it's not. And then they have to go find some philosophical argument that they may invariably be misinterpreting to make their point. They'd start arguing about atoms or something, and what's holding those together, and you're like, oh my God, like that your Bible doesn't even have atoms in it, and if he did, he's fucking his clone transvestite sister, it's like it just drives me crazy when they're misusing these things.
Yeah.
And it's just like and then it turns from, for me, it ceases to be I guess maybe, I don't know, I go through moods, but it's less about debating the existence of God, and it's more about teaching them scientific principles, right? It's like, no, you're not understanding how that works. It's like this. And then the fact that they don't understand it now is somehow a personal insult to their intelligence or whatever. And it's not meant to be. It's like, but it kind of is too, right? Like you just simply don't understand. You talk about young Earth creationism. It's like, no, when they say that carbon dating isn't accurate, what they mean to say is it's not accurate for 100 million years, but it's pretty fucking accurate for what, 100,000 years, 200,000 years?
I think it's closer to 50 to 65,000 years for carbon dating. But then you've got lead, argon, lead.
Yeah, then you get into the radioactive carbon dating. And, that's like way more. And then not only that, but, you look at what carbon dating does within its scale of accuracy, and you compare it to other dating methods, and everything always has consistently every time landed in the right spot, right? Which is just more evidence to show that the theory of dating, whether it be carbon or whatever, is accurate. And it's just maddening to me to hear them say, well, that's wrong. It's like, you got half the story from someone and they didn't know what it was, and then they quote some stupid fucking book, and it just drives me absolutely. Yeah, okay, fine, I'll stop arguing with you to read your stupid book. I'll get back to you in 6 months and tell you that your book's a bunch of crap.
We're having a local festival right now, and it was kind of funny. I took my kids up to it, and they had a stand set up by a church like a little kiosk out near all the rides and stuff. And this woman handed out a little Bible. And she hands me one. She goes, "Would you like this?" And I'm like, "Is that a Gideon's?" And she goes, "Oh, yeah." And I was like, "I already got one." She had a big old smile on her face, like, "Oh, you read the Bible. Okay, have a nice day. God bless." She didn't even ask me whether or not I believed it, but, you know.
Or you use it for toilet paper or whatever. Yeah.
So we were in New York. It was, my wife and my kids, and they're little kids still. We were walking down the street, and this merry band of Christians were rocking out. If you look at my Facebook profile picture, it was taken by them. And this lady walks up to my kids and hands them a piece of paper. And I knew right away, you could smell the Christian on them. You know what I'm saying? Glazed over happy look of ignorance. Yeah. And she walks up to my kid and just hands him a piece of paper. And so I snapped at her. I said, "Get the fuck away from my kid." Right. And I kind of stepped forward and she recoiled, as if, walking up to a stranger's child and handing them your propaganda was a bad thing.
Yeah.
And then we kept walking, and some other lady who did or did not see that came up to me and she says, "Have you heard of Jesus?" And I looked her right in the eye. I said, "Jesus? Never heard of him." And she just got this weird, perplexed look on her face. And then we just continued walking. And I was like, I got to get a picture of these guys, And so
it is a dishonest that you pointed out. It's a dishonest question. She knows you've heard of the name. She just wants to start the conversation about him.
Yeah.
Which is ironic for like a Christian missionary type.
I have to admit that I was less than graceful back in the day when I used to argue on Stickam. There was a bunch of Christians who would generally come in pretty consistently to argue with us in the atheist room that we were in. And at one point, this one Christian guy was like, "Oh, well, atheists believe this and atheists believe that, and they believe this and they believe that." And he was mischaracterizing everything that I knew atheism to be. Yeah. And I'm like, "All right, cool. You're a Jesusist then. And as a Jesusist, you believe that your Lord will return once a half-chewed stick of bubble gum gets stuck in your hair overnight, and then you use this special holy shampoo to remove it. And then once you're done with that shampoo, you have to wash your lower extremities and then eat of the bread of your loins." And then
so
Jesus
heard of the faith.
Yeah, and he's like, "Christians don't believe that. That's just ridiculous. That you're not even making any sense." And what I was saying was completely asinine. It hardly made sense.
You're drawing the equivalence of what he was doing.
Yeah, I'm just like, dude, if you can do and say whatever you want about us, then the door's open. I can make up whatever crazy shit I want you guys to believe. Yeah. You are worse than Scientologists.
Yep.
And he's like, "What? No, we're not. Scientology's evil." And I'm like, "Well, whatever."
But you were asking, Carl, you were asking before about the best argument from theists. The only way I can answer that is to say that the most powerful thing that they use, I know your background, if I remember correctly, you had like a secular upbringing, right? You were never indoctrinated. So sometimes when I am in an environment with Christians, it is totally emotional. It's a mindset. For instance, thinking of if I picture someone I love on their deathbed, and if I were for some reason there, I don't know why this is always in movies, but and I'm there. And they suddenly, at some point turn to me and they're like, do you believe that there's going to be something after I die? Like, that right there is a very difficult thing, to think, like, well, how would I handle that? Because clearly I don't.
So I was actually put in that situation before.
Oh, wow.
And I'm forgetting the Greek philosopher's name. His book was Ethics. Whoever was the philosopher who did Ethics, and that was one of the chapters he talked about where telling the truth, sometimes it's ethical to lie, basically. And the example he gave was a woman was on her deathbed and her husband wanted to come clean and tell her that he had been cheating on her, and she thought he never did and that he was a wonderful guy, blah blah blah. And so while she was on her deathbed, he told her the truth, that he had been cheating on her right before she died. And ethically, was that the right thing to do? Because you're telling the truth. And In that example, no, probably not. Maybe just let her die thinking that you are a great guy. Don't let, God, this poor woman is dying, hypothetical, was dying. And, can it get any lower? Yeah, your husband basically tells you that he was cheating on you to make himself feel better. That is not ethical, was basically the argument. And I went through a similar situation, like I was saying. My aunt died of cancer, and it was my favorite aunt, and I used to call her and talk to her on the phone every couple of weeks. She wasn't here locally. She was in the East Coast, and so obviously coming from Arizona, that's a bit more of a drive that you want to do on the weekend. And so I'd talk to her every couple of weeks and until she died, and as long as she could talk on the phone. And she asked me point blank, she didn't really know if I was religious or not, but she asked me if I believed in life after death. And I just told her, I don't know, it's funny because I paused for a moment and I thought of that ethics, and I was like, yeah, there's a time and place, and so I just told her, I said, I don't know. When I do know what I believe, and I know I don't believe in a life after death, but what was more important at that time, right? And so so there's time and place for things, right? So anyways, sorry to bring everyone down.
No, that's, I think that anyone who listens to this could either be someone who's gone through that or might one day go through that. And it's something we're thinking about and wondering how other people have handled it.
Yeah.
It's never really come up in my family. Both my grandparents are religious, and they don't even know I do this. They don't. My parents do, but my grandparents.
Their email? We can send them a link.
No, that's fine. Because I think they would be scared for me. And honestly, to answer the earlier question, what is the best argument? Fear. It's not an argument though. Fear is not an argument, but like just that fear of the unknown, fear of whether or not you lived a good life. Fear is the strongest case that theism has because it preys on that fear.
Yeah.
Oh, without a doubt. I mean, you get the fear of hell. Pascal's wager is a fear-based argument. Reading the Bible, you get fearful of this God. Every page you're like, oh, this guy better not piss him off. Fear is a great way to sell, the news, life insurance, you name it. Fear is a primal, and it's exploited by so many things, not just religion. And it's funny too, because when I hear people make the Pascal's wager argument, which is by far the one I hear the most.
Yeah.
It's funny to me. And I started saying this to people. I try to actively remember to say this first, is that, the first argument that you make for the existence of your God is, what if I'm wrong? Fear of retaliation is not exactly a good argument for a loving God, is it? And it shows that's the first thing they think of. If I say, hey, Corey, your sports team is terrible, you will immediately tell me why your sports team is awesome.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
And when I say, your sports team doesn't exist, your first thing you're going to do is go, well, they have a stadium, or you can turn to Channel 5 right now, or you can, you're not going to say, well, if you don't like my sports team, you're going to rot in hell. Right.
Yeah. Or what if you're wrong?
Yeah. Or what if you're wrong? My sports team is the best. But it just shows like where the first argument a person makes, and it's not true 100% of the time, but a lot of times the first argument they make is the strongest reason that they have to believe.
Yeah.
And if the strongest reason you have to believe in something is fear of retaliation, then that's not a really strong reason to believe it.
Post-rapture living.
It's going to be a horror story. This is what the Bible teaches. Millions of people will die on that day and every day thereafter. This kind of conversation of what will we do the next day, that doesn't make, it's nonsense. It's utter nonsense.
Post-rapture.
Welcome to the Post-Rapture Looting Podcast.
episode?
Trace. 3,
4. Episode 4.
We can't count. I can't.
I was just testing you.
Oh.
You failed.
Testes, 1, 2.
Testes?
1, 2. Yeah.
Okay. I'm Carl.
I'm Ben.
This is an atheist podcast where we make jokes at the expense of religious people and their imaginary friends. God, Jesus, Zeus, Ra, the sun god, whatever. If your imaginary friend can't take a joke, then you should stop listening now and seek psychiatric help. If you believe you're going to be raptured, please sign over all of your possessions to me, post-dated, of course.
Of course.
Because we wouldn't want you to, have me take it before the end of the world.
That would be moral.
I will not take it from you until October 22nd. Assuming it hasn't burned down to the ground. Assuming, yes. You can find us on the web at www.postrapturelooting.net. At this point, the website's very basic. Working on it, but it's going slow. So, this podcast was inspired by the Post-Rapture Looting event page on Facebook, based off a joke from the false prophet Harold Camping and his failed May 21st rapture prediction. Like all religious people who make these insane claims, this insane prediction did not come true. There is no God, there is no rapture, and I'm amazed that people still believe in all this crap.
The drive to survive is kind of built into us.
I think he means logically, if the authenticity of the logic.
Let's dial the clock back a couple of 100 years.
Can we get a sound effect for that, please?
I think that's the one of Wayne's World, right?
Imagine being able to be magically whisked away to Delaware. Hi, I'm in Delaware.
Dude.
I don't have any
crates.
I don't have any Pizza Hut here to advertise or anything. So.
Yeah. Oh, was it Socrates who did ethics? No, I gotta Google that now. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember that one too.
But in an age where the church ruled and you could have your head put on a block for not believing in something that was in all other ways illogical to you, if you know that your survival depends on your silence, you're going to be silent. You are going to be silent. We live in a wonderful age where where we are allowed to have a counterculture to the majority of people who believe, and very little fear of annihilation. But
Aristotle. Sorry.
No problem. But if things were to change to once again religious dominated governance, and we will kill those who have a difference of opinion with us, I think a lot of the communities that we speak about and for and with would ghost, just gone, disappear. Oh yeah, I believe totally.
Yeah.
Is it self-serving? Probably, but I think it's probably the only way that you can explain why that fear has such power.
Well, yeah.
And why it's losing power now, because that fear of that imminent threat of death for having a difference of opinion is gone.
Yeah, you're talking about conformity. That isn't the definition of belief. Like some people, you're right, it is just a matter of conformity or acceptance. Acceptance has a type of fear as well, even if it's not, I'm going to kill you. It's that, well, I don't want my family to say they're disappointed, or, I had a church family, like a church community growing up. Now, many people would be uncomfortable having me in the church. Like, a lot of them don't know, but if they did know, they'd be uncomfortable because, what if he says something that's going to try and change our children or our minds away from the true faith?
Yeah.
There's different types of fear, different types of pressures.
I agree.
But according to South Park, in the future, the people who are going to be killing anyone that doesn't conform will be atheists.
Yes. Wait,
we're not doing it now?
Here's a question. Maybe it's a little less heavy. Why? Because you kind of tripped on something that I was already thinking about when you said those people in New York had that glossy-eyed, smiling grin. Why is it that every church, mega church, has that leader that has that vacant, glossy-eyed expression? Like there's nobody behind the wheel in that skull. but they got that face you just want to punch because they look like that fucking dude who ripped you off for a vacuum cleaner who came to your door. You know, like, oh God, it's like they're cut from the same fucking mold.
You know, it's funny. We moved into this house, 10 years ago, and the people across the street from us were out front and really nice people. And we would talk to them for 5-10 minutes or whatever, and we went back in and we're unpacking boxes or whatever. And we get back into the house, and then I said to my wife, I'm like, wow, they're churchy. And she goes, what do you mean? They didn't say anything about religion. I'm like, yeah, but they had that look. And she's like, what are you talking about? It's like gaydar, right? Like, it's, you can just look at someone and they have that Christian, like, glazed over look to their face.
Yeah.
And you can just spot them, and my Christian radar was on. And, ding, 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 ding. And it's exactly, that's what it is, right? And then she didn't believe me, which is, that's fine, and then, sometime later, we come to, you get confirmation that, they are, crazy in the church, and, they didn't do Halloween or, anything like that. And my wife was like, how did you do that? How could you tell that they were, religious in 30 seconds? And I'm like, they just have that look.
You are...
Look, and, oh, you guys are breaking up. Am I breaking up?
Okay. It happened a couple of seconds there, but you're okay.
Okay. But yeah, so no, it's just funny. And I'm kind of cluing her in on what the signs are, what the tell is. And yeah, it's funny now because she's kind of picking up on it too. And yeah, these guys in New York, it was like, wow, they were glazed over. It was crazy. In fact, if you look at my Facebook picture, you can see it. And it's like you can just see them behind me even. Just, they're not even looking at the camera, I don't think. I'm looking now, and they just have it. Yeah, anyways.
The smile, though. It's the glazed look with the smile. And the best way I can, and I'm sorry, at the risk of sounding a little bit of like an intellectual snob, not that I consider myself an intellectual, but comparatively, fucking Einstein. The expression is that all-knowing, like, I know something you don't know. Yeah. Like that look of an idiot at the movie theater who figured out the plot twist 10 minutes after the plot twist was revealed and then thinks that he knows something everyone in the theater doesn't already know.
Yeah.
It's like, no.
Isn't that what Atticus said? That sometimes it's a feeling of importance. It gives them that feeling of importance, like this magic and knowledge has been imparted on them.
Oh yes, like hi.
And they know and you don't.
It's funny because I don't think of it as I know something you don't know. I see it as they are just constantly believing that there's this better thing waiting for them and that they're going to get it. It's like they're the next one in line, right?
Yeah.
Like it's that it's coming any day now, and yeah.
It can get them into trouble though when they speak on certain topics about it, like because they have that laid back sense about it. So, for instance, sometimes when they've tried to comment on the Holocaust, I'm sure you've heard a different instance along the years of a Christian who believes we're all going to go to heaven and there's a master plan, and then when they're talking about the Holocaust as someone's challenging their beliefs, their reply will often be something along, "Well, God has a plan." And he'll use that for something great. And understandably, Jews go insane when they hear that.
Well,
his plan required him to allow for an insane Nazi party to slaughter millions of us in concentration camps, the most horrible conditions. Wow, you must have a wonderful God.
Well, you want to know what? I've always had the problem of this, and I'm not the only one. This idea that there's a master plan that also allows for the free will of the people involved in the plan.
Yeah.
If Jesus' second coming is hinged on a natural birth, and I have a gun, and I asked this to a Christian once, if I want to stop the second coming, can I shoot pregnant Mary 2.0 and kill Jesus 2.0 before he's born and stop the plan?
Oh, well, this time he's coming down in the flaming chariot.
Well, whatever.
And I don't mean gay. It's like supposed to be. Well, maybe it is.
It was a hypothetical. It was a hypothetical. I said, could I stop the second coming if it was by a natural birth?
There's a lot of hints about him being gay. I'm just,
Oh, yeah, totally. But regard Flaming Chariot, yeah.
Same with George Washington. But like with George Washington, you're not allowed to even discuss that.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's okay to talk about Abraham Lincoln, right? I just want to...
Oh, probably. I'm not sure.
Well, when he wasn't slaying vampires, he's pretty kick-ass, rustling bears in the woods alongside Paul Bunyan. But, like, seriously, they can't deal in hypotheticals. And, like, they don't understand that if there's a master plan that cannot be changed, no matter what sequence of events gets you to endgame X, then everything else leading up to that point was decided. My choices have no effect or bearing on the outcome.
Well, anyone, even a lot of non-believers have it's difficult to deal with the lack of simplicity about free will. Like, if you can go into someone's brain, neurology is showing us the different way the brain works. If you go into someone's brain and, alter something in there, and the person becomes a fundamentally different type of person, then your idea of free will is now being challenged at the very ground level. And so for believers, it's obvious the type of problems this will cause. If God controls everything, if he creates everything about you, and he's almighty and all-knowing, then where's your free will? Because as soon as you have free will, he has no control over that.
You bring up a really good point.
How often in a discussion have you heard the words, if your God did this, and they would go, oh, my God would never do that. Yeah. Well, hypothetically, oh no, I can't even deal with that scenario because it would never happen. Well, no, we're talking about a hypothetical. Like, could you hypothetically talk about whether or not you would do this? Oh yeah. Well, okay, well now we're going to do the same thing, but with your God. No. It's like they're afraid.
They're conditioned.
Yeah.
That's just the devil trying to trick them.
Yeah, exactly, Carl. I went through that kind of conditioning where they anticipated valid arguments that might come across, and I was taught since I was young to anticipate them as tricks.
Yeah.
Yeah. You have to break through that, and in order to work through it, it came piece by piece for me.
Yeah. Yeah, even though I was raised in a secular home, I wasn't raised in a home that said there was no God. I just was raised in a home truly secular by definition. It was just never a topic that was discussed. And I, it's interesting because,
oh, we're losing.
Even though my parents didn't discuss it, I can tell you every other parent I ever interacted with and other kids talked about it. And now I, as a parent, have to deal with my kids hearing this bullshit, and it pisses me off, Yeah. And, so...
You shouldn't have to protect your kids from other people's religious ideas. They should respectfully approach you about them.
Yeah. They should. But they don't, right? And that's just a hypocrisy that is... And then you try to explain that, and then they refuse to understand your side of it, and then they just completely ignore your response and give you some bad example,
Yeah.
Sorry.
No. I have to take off. I got a message from my wife. Something for me to deal with. Awesome. So you can cut that part out because it's.
You can let me know later what broke down.
Yeah. I don't think anything broke. I think one of my kids needs some daddy attention.
Okay.
All right. Anyways.
And you can thank Carl for giving me some good advice there on.
The stuffed animal thing.
Yeah.
Hold on, I'll do that right now. Thank you very much. Corey relayed the information to me about your opinion on the whole stuffed animal thing.
Because you give the kid power.
Yeah.
Right? And you say, when are you going to give it up?
Yeah.
And give them the power, and it, yeah. Anyways, it's manipulative.
I like it. Anyways, all right. I'll catch you guys later.
Yeah.
It was a great interview. Thank you.
Okay, I'm waving bye, but you can't see me.
See you then, man.
Okay. All right. So he has departed. I don't know. You listen to the show, so you probably hear that he often has to run out. He has the kids and the family situation and education stuff going on, and so.
Yeah, no, I understand. I have 3 kids myself. I'm well aware how distracting they are.
I think it's great, though. I know there are some people who, I don't know if you've met them, who have this attitude like children should be silent and out of the way and they're an inconvenience. I think that they're a normal part of life. And so, for instance, I've talked to Smashlock about the possibility of when I was out on the road, I guess not now, but when I was out on the road, connecting with him through his computer or his phone and then our guest as well, and doing our interview that way. And he was worried that his kids might be hurt. And I was like, dude, that's all right. I mean, they're a part of life. If they're grabbing your microphone and screaming into it, that's probably going to interfere. But if you're hearing kids in the background, people should be able to deal with that.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, we're doing podcasts from our home. We don't have a professional studio, right? And I think, the kids screaming in the background adds a level of, what's a good word? Authenticity to it, right?
Yeah.
It may not be professional necessarily, but it doesn't have to be that, right? And if someone's going to get uptight about the fact that you might hear a kid occasionally scream or something in the background like mine are doing now, then they just need to get over it. It's like we went to dinner. We just had the one kid at the time, and he had a wet diaper. And when you have kids, you try to go out to dinner. He wasn't crying or nothing. He just had a wet diaper. So I just put him on my lap and just did a field strip new diaper on right there at the table. And it wasn't poo or anything; it was just pee, right?
Yeah.
And this lady, I use the word loosely, at the next table over, says loud enough for us to hear, on purpose, "I can't believe you just changed this kid's diaper in the middle of the restaurant." And it's like, and I'm just thinking to myself, wow, I can't believe that you forget that we're humans,
Yeah. Yeah.
And
exactly.
It's not like I'm throwing the diaper, on your table or something. And
yeah, you could have. That would have been funny.
I probably should have, but it was a cloth diaper.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So I wanted to keep it. Right. So maybe rubber face in it or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
But,
just,
whatever.
Just hit her with it a few times.
It's part of life and growing up, and eventually she'll catch up with the rest of us. And I'm not going to hold too much against her, for her uninformed position. Yeah. But
well, Carl, we've had you for a couple hours. I guess one of the things I like doing with the show is when I have people on here.
So that's it. You're just gonna throw me aside like a used diaper.
No,
I'm sorry. You're picking up there.
we're gonna wrap you into a ball because you're reusable, and we're gonna save you for later.
You just gotta wash me. Twice.
You must be cleansed.
Yeah.
See, I like having guests like you on the show who do their own podcast because if people listen to you, I listen to all you guys. I get a sense of certain elements of who you are, but it's nice for you guys to be able to come on the show, and I like just talking to you for who you are rather than why you're doing your show, like in the process of it.
Yeah. No, absolutely. When I'm doing my podcast, I'm not really, my own true self isn't necessarily coming out a lot, right?
Well, part of you, part of you is.
Yeah. But no, I mean, that's a great, and I was saying earlier, that's why I like to hear podcasts with other podcasters.
Yeah. Because
you kind of, it's weird how you hear someone in a podcast and it's like, that person pretty well. And I guess this happens to celebrities where, people know them, but they don't know the people just walking up to them, right?
Yeah.
And you just kind of assume that they know you as well as you know them. So it's just a little when I'm standing on their lawn barbecuing, that's what I'm trying to say. So sorry, Kevin Bacon. It was a mistake. But so all right. Well, our connections turn into shit, and
it's
I'm looking forward to hearing what you put in here and how much you clean up. All of my ums and hms and whatnot. And I'm a little worried to hear what you're going to put in there.
It's always good.
It is. It is always good. But it's fun to hear how someone else would do it. You know what I'm saying? And I'm sure it's going to be great. I like your podcast. I've said it before. I'll say it again. I really enjoy your podcast. You do a tremendous job with it. The guests you've had, myself excluded, have been really good. A lot of times it's funny to hear podcasts and that, certain people are doing the rounds on all the podcasts, right?
Yeah.
But you've had people I haven't heard anywhere else, and you've had some really good stuff. And the one you had with the feminist lady was, you opened up, you bared a lot of personal stuff that was going on, and I thought, that was a really good interview. and the topics that you guys discussed and everything. It was good.
Thanks, man. I appreciate that. I really do.
Yeah, no, I know you do because I have a podcast too. And no one ever says that to me. But
well, does it help that we're all disappointed that you're not going to continue to slave away doing editing on your show anymore?
You know what? It got to be kind of depressing because I would read all these fucknut crazy news stories about religion. And it used to be I would do, if you hear the podcast, you go back, the first 20 of them, I had maybe 4 or 5 stories and we would just kind of talk about it. And then, around episode 50, I'd have 6 or 7 episodes, 6 or 7 stories that I would do. The last 25 or so, when we introduced the quiz show, was because there was just so many stories I was coming across that, I wanted to cover, but didn't have the time.
Yeah.
To cover them. So I turned a lot of them just, every individual question is a news story that came across, my eyes. And, when you start coming across 10, 20 in batshit crazy, insane religious stories where people are being hurt, in some form or another, it gets it wears on you, And,
yeah, absolutely.
And it's just like, I just need to take a break from this because I just really despise religion. And I think what religious people don't understand is I don't hate them, right? I think religion is really good at tricking good people into being religious when religion doesn't actually provide them anything good. It's if anything, it's sucking away their goodness because look at all these great people we have who are religious.
Yeah.
I've said this on my podcast a couple of times. Like religion is the mafia. As the mafia does to bad people and exploits them, religion exploits good people. And so it's not that religion is necessarily the good. It's the people who get drawn into religion. They just buy the sales pitch. And so they think, oh, I'm a good person. I'm going to be religious.
Yeah.
And look at all these good people who are doing it when it's not the religion that's making them good. It's the fact that they're already just good people. And I see people getting sucked into religion for the wrong reasons. And then you look at, what is religion actually providing when you take a look at it, a real good look at it without the glasses of religion, without a belief in God, and you've seen it from both angles,
Yep.
And, when you were in the middle of it, it seemed like it was the best thing ever. But then when you lost your faith and looked at it a little more critically, you started to realize that, maybe this isn't really such a good thing. And how do you explain to someone who's wearing the rose-colored glasses that
right.
their religion
with me, it had to be that what happened with me was that truth was more important to me than what felt good. I mean, it felt awful to start coming to these conclusions. Like, there's no evidence for this mighty God that I had believed in. There's no evidence that we're going to live forever in some paradise. Those are not fun things to face. But I always said to people, even when I was a believer and before I started that journey, if you don't have truth on your side, then even if you have the best things ever, you won't know it. Like, how can you know what you have if you don't have truth? There's no way of defining anything. And that's what motivated me to move out of the faith. Whereas I think a lot of people, they say they want truth, but they draw their limits. So much truth, only so much.
Yeah, it's frustrating, because and you just get to a point where you're at with friends who are religious, where it's like, just don't even bring the subject up, right? And because we disagree, and you don't want to hear what I have to say about it, And
well, I do avoid the topic with some people because I don't want to upset them in the sense of I know how the conversation is going to go, and I know they're not in a position that they want to hear any of it. So, like, what's the point of trying to bring it up with them socially? So I will try and just remain quiet at times. Not because I don't have the right to say something, but because I really don't want to get into an argument that's just going to make people bitter and nothing's going to change.
Yeah.
You have to kind of play it as you go. And then there's other people that I know who don't talk about this stuff to believers because they don't think they're capable of changing. And to those people, I say, you think a lot of yourself, because if you think you're so smart that you figured it out, but they can't, then either you think you're emotionally or mentally more capable innately than they are. And I don't think that's the case. But there's a time and a place, to pick your battles.
And it's amazing too, because in all these things, they don't, just buy a used car on faith, and
that's right. Yeah, exactly.
This, and so this one aspect of their life, they use no logic towards, and then you go, well, why not? They go, well, sometimes you just need magic. It's like, no, you don't.
Stupefy.
But then and then you're the bad person because you're, trying to take away this thing that makes them happy, and it's like, why am I the bad person for, trying to understand the world? And as you say, what is true? What is the truth? How is, critically analyzing something to find the truth of that thing, right?
Yeah.
And then that's wherein lies like an issue I have with religion, where it's against critically examining evidence, and it's against the truth. And, if anything, searching for the truth should always lead back to God being real. And in every instance, it doesn't.
Yeah.
And it just, even the God of the gaps argument, when you boil that down, at best, you're going to end up with a deist position. It certainly isn't going to be Christian.
Yeah.
Or, any other religion for that matter. So it's amazing. So anyway, so I clearly have an opinion on this stuff. And although I'm not doing post-rapture looting anymore, I am planning to do another podcast. And I'm just trying to brainstorm how I want to do it. And, the things I've learned from doing post-rapture looting, and try to, learn from my mistakes and whatnot, and moving forward, and try to hopefully put out something that's better. And I know you have a Mac, right?
Yep.
So I should probably get with you offline at some point and discuss how you're recording all this stuff. Because one of my problems is recording the audio when I talk to people. And so, and that's kind of one of, and I'm sure I could just jump on Google and, have it fixed in, a reasonable amount of time. But, talking to other Mac people would help me, because I have a Mac. And
yeah, learning some of the tricks.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, well, absolutely. And I was going to say, if there's anything you need help with, that I can help with, let me know. And also, when you figure out what you are going to do for your podcast, let me know. We'll promote it on the show.
Okay, yeah, that'd be fantastic.
I'm glad you took some time to get to know Carl, formerly of Post-Rapture Looting. Stay tuned to find out what he's going to be doing next. I hope you enjoyed what you heard. I'm sure you did. We had a good talk with him, and when he does find out what he's going to do, when he works it out, I'll definitely be letting you know here. I'm also going to have links that you can follow from the show notes to different places where you can keep up with him as he makes his plans for the future to continue to entertain and inform. Until next time, I hope that everybody continues to think for themselves, as Carl has often been an example of himself, and be strong.
That does it. Out you two pixies go, through the door or out the window.